Hey guys, what's going on? Not a whole lot of you out there today. This is Tom Dunn on the Angry Sun Media channel, and I have a special guest today that I'm very excited about. Throughtheblack.com is the website, and that's where you can find out about all of our stuff, our films, our campaigns, and where we're going to be. And speaking about where we're going to be, Jared is actually in California this weekend speaking at the what's the name of it? Question Everything Conference. So I don't know if it's too late to get over there or not, but he's there. He's going to be speaking tonight and tomorrow, and we have an amazing crew over there helping him out, run our table, and sell our movies. So I wish I could be there, but I'm glad that it's all in capable hands. But guys, I don't want to waste any time today jumping into what we're doing. And if you are listening to this now and you want to take this link and share it on social media and let everybody know, hey, we are doing an interview with Carly France. Did I say your name right, Carly?
Carly Franz, but
Carly Franz. Okay.
Cool.
The funny thing is the church that I went to about 10 years ago had a young girl there that's name was Carly Franz, but it was spelled with an O, not an A. And that's what I keep thinking of. I didn't know her. I just knew her dad, and I remember that's one of his daughter's names. So, and I keep wanting to say your name wrong, and I'll probably get it wrong, but I'm just going to call you Carly. And if anybody has been hiding under a rock and you don't know what's going on, Carly has made a series of videos over the past few months and several in the past couple weeks and month, detailing what she experienced when she was a little girl. And as she gets her memories back, she is just disclosing everything. And it's an incredible story. It really is an incredible story. And we were just so blown away by her courage and just how she just brought confirmation to so many things. And I reached out to her and I said, hey, I want you to come on our show and talk about this, and really want to have Jared on here too. But of course, he is out of town, and this is kind of a weird time for us to do a show. I don't know if we've ever done an interview on a Friday afternoon, but again, we wanted to kind of jump on this and do it while the opportunity was here. So here we are. And Carly, for anybody that I don't know how to introduce you, for anybody that doesn't know your story, I mean, I just don't want to jump into this craziness, but I mean, before we do there, say, tell me something good, tell me something funny happened in your life this week. I mean, are you doing okay? What's going on?
I'm doing okay. I'm hanging in there. I'm trying to think of something funny that happened this week.
I always put people on the spot with that question.
Oh yeah, this is funny. Okay. Nah, I don't know.
Hey, that's okay. It'll come to you later.
It'll come to me. I'll think of something.
So,
here's something funny that happened recently within like the past 2 weeks. So I have always been under the idea that the Earth is a globe. However, I've watched a couple of YouTube videos recently that makes me think otherwise in about 40 minutes. So I think that's kind of something to laugh about. I know
there's a lot of listeners to this show that would say that's not funny, that's serious business, but that's more the field of my co-host Jared, who's actually part of the conference that he's at this weekend, Question Everything. They're going to have flat earth talks and lectures and all that stuff out there. So
cool.
we have many friends of this show that are flat earth. So you probably made many people's day if you were leaning towards a flat earth model. So that's in our community, that's a big deal. So, okay. Yeah. Well, I don't have anything funny really. I probably do, but I like days like today because I'm going to a hockey game tonight. And we've had this tradition in my family for like the last few years where we get like this local drugstore. If you buy a gift card, they give out free hockey tickets. So for like every year, like the first of the year for like the last 5 years. We've been going to a hockey game, but I like there's no stress today. I'm like, okay, cool. We're going to the game tonight, and I'm just going to relax. And it's just, it's kind of a family thing. So I'm kind of looking forward to it. But, um, Carly, anyway, enough with the fun stuff. This is the dark stuff. This is the dark stuff. And,
Yeah.
I just, I think we got to laugh, and we got to just try to, you know, um, go into this, knowing that that there's healing and that there's hope. And even though this is a very dark subject, and you are one of many, many people that have suffered this, there is hope, and there is a way out. And um we point to God as being salvation. But last August, according to your testimony and things, of what you've been sharing, your memories began to come back to you. What was going on in August where this happened?
Here's what was going on in August. It was about like August 15th. It was a couple of weeks before the fall college semester began. And like I was going to school for social work. Like it was already in my heart to help other people, to help children in need. So I was learning also about like, all of the terrible things that happen with CPS and all of the implications of the police being threatening to people to silence social workers. And so before the semester even began, I was reading my books, of course, and I've decided to do some research on the Illuminati because I had really never paid attention to it. I haven't seen a lot of like Hollywood movies. I was just very always disenchanted with Hollywood in general. I always thought that Hollywood actors, actresses are just superficial, you know what? And it's hard for me to watch a movie and actually like care about the actors and the characters. So I was doing some research on this. Like, why do people talk about the Illuminati? Why do people make a big deal out of this? And that's when Freemasonry came up, and I was like, oh, okay. My grandfather's brother, Peter, is a master Mason, and he told me this like last year when we were at his house, or not his house, but my grandfather's house having lunch. And so I started looking up like the Freemasonry stuff. And when I saw, like, as soon as I saw the picture of them in their tuxedos and aprons with all of the insignias, the blue and white and gold, that was the triggering moment for me that the memories came back. Not all of them all at once, but the main ones of them in like this long dining room just standing out in my mind, especially because that was uh, when I remember seeing their aprons and all of their
So, okay.
necklaces. Yeah.
Yeah. No, very interesting. I mean,
I
this is
was
what we hear a lot. Yeah. People,
so
something triggers a memory. Go ahead.
yeah. So at the time when these memories came back to me in August of 2015, I was actually living at my perpetrator's house up in the attic. Isn't that interesting?
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, after that, I was like, oh, I gotta get out of here. And I kind of left all of my stuff there. All this stuff.
So the memories, you saw the aprons, and you had a memory come back. You kind of explained that, but like, I mean, what were you thinking at the time? Did you question, is this real, or am I making this up, or how did you know that it really happened?
Because I also remembered being a little girl and thinking about, like, oh my God, this did happen to me. Like, I remember laying in my bed at my grandfather's house. Well, the house is owned by my grandfather, but my father lives there. So I would lay in bed and think, like, oh my God, I wish that this didn't happen to me. Like I have a hard time believing it's real myself, but I did go through it. Like it was so awful that I didn't want to believe that it had actually happened.
Well, I think there's a good reason that those memories were suppressed, and I think people are going to understand that as we talk about your story. So why don't we kind of get into that a little bit? And for anybody that doesn't know, Carly has her own channel out there, and she has been disclosing this information. We have been pointing people to it. So how do they find the channel though? For anybody that wants to go watch the actual videos.
If you want to watch my videos on my channel, you can just search on YouTube search bar Carly Noel, KarlyNoel, 2 words. And it's a picture of me and my face. I'm wearing a white button-up shirt, sitting on a couch. So that's me. And if somebody says that I have a Facebook or an Instagram or something, that's not true. That's not me. You can only find my content on YouTube. Everything
Okay.
else is other people's content, and it's not me.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So in what did you now I know this has been a process, but what were some of your first memories? Let's try to go through like the past 6 months and try to figure out when these memories came in at what time. What was you've already been sharing this, but um how did this, I mean, how did this play out in your mind? Explain
For
your
sure.
memories.
So when my memories first came back to me, they were kind of fragmented. Like I remember the basement, the red carpet in the hallway with the mirrors and the chandeliers, and the one lady who I'm supposing is the Eastern Star, like head witch, whatever, what have you. And then the hallway and the dining room with all of the Freemasons just packed in there in their tuxedos and their regalia. And then bits and pieces would come back as I would go over the memories in my head. So the first, like my first video that I made was made shortly after my memories came back to me. And as you can tell, like it's like an abridged version of my full testimony. So as I kept going over things in my head and just trying to retrace everything, more of the memories came back in clarity. And it's kind of like I play piano. If there's a song that I haven't played in a while, I don't remember all the parts, all of the changes. However, if I practice it for about 20 minutes and just keep going over and over and over it, I remember how to play it again. And then 20 minutes later, I can play a full song. So it's kind of the same thing with my memory, where I took the initial memories that came back to me and just kept replaying them over and over and over until I had the full picture, which is why I made the full testimony video.
Just to back
In
you up,
October,
Carly,
oh,
I've had experiences like that. I do not have any traumatic memories where I was abused. I've had some crazy memories of some weird stuff, and I've went back and I'm like, and I'll challenge my mom. I'm like, hey, do you remember this? Remember that? And this should be like, yeah, I do. And it was one of those situations where I'm like, I didn't know if that was real or not, but I talked to my mom and she confirmed it. So I can identify, and I think many people can identify with what you're saying, because the age that we're talking about is an age that can be kind of cloudy for us. So I
right.
didn't mean to interrupt, but I want to back you up, and I think people will be able to identify with this. So go ahead.
For sure, yeah. And like another way that other people can identify with this is that I don't remember the last 5 birthdays that I had that were pleasant, you know? I don't remember what I ate on those birthdays. I don't remember what I got for my birthday presents. But every traumatic and really extraordinary thing that's happened to me in my life, I remember it very clearly. But that is completely normal. That's how our brains function. And it has to do a lot too with, like, you know, what's going on at a neurological level with the adrenaline in your body and the retention of memories when your body is going through a somatic change like that. So in about October, more memories came back to me. And in November, even more memories came back to me. So I decided that I would meet with my mother and talk to her in person. And she told me a couple of things that were misleading because she is one of my handlers, of course, like the 1994 date, telling me that she was out of town in 1994 for a week. It was actually 1996. And that's why in one of my videos, I talk about 1994. I had just gotten off the phone with her. That was probably the last phone call that I'll ever have with my mother. I don't know. But she called me up just huffing and puffing and angry that I'm speaking out. And then she tried to get me riled up because people who are your handlers, especially those who are related to you, they know how to get to you. They know how to get you irritated. They know how to criticize you on things that are completely superficial. For instance, like my college education goes so far as I don't have an associate's degree. I'm very close to that and transferring to like a 4-year institution. I do have a certificate in German. And of course, here's my mother calling me up to harass me about my education and how I haven't finished yet. Like, what? Are you kidding me? This is so petty. But anyways, I kind of want to get into telling people what I've been through, like in my trauma.
Yeah.
Do you want to
Yeah.
switch over to that
Go
now?
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
But anyways, all of my memories have come back to me now. And so let's see, August, September, October, November, December, January. So in 5 months, I was able to recover all of the things that happened to me, which is pretty awesome. So back in, I'm going to start at the very beginning. My parents were married in 1989. They divorced in 1992. And so at the time, we were all living in a house that my grandfather bought for them and my whole family to live in. And so my mom tried to sue my father and grandfather to get the house. And the lawsuit, she didn't show up for court, and it was never closed. I looked this up. And she denies that she even filed this lawsuit pro se. And it's like, well, there's a record of it because I approached her about this when I met up with her in person in November last year. Anyways, so this lawsuit happened, and she lived with her sister Shelley and brother-in-law Charles. And so my mom had custody of me, and then, well, they had split custody, but she was the main custodian of me. So I would go visit my dad. He would pick me up from school on Tuesday nights and Friday nights, and I would spend the weekend with my dad and spend the rest of the week with my mom and my Aunt Shelley and Charles. So in 1996, I was abducted when my mom was out of town on a work trip. My grandfather's brother came up to the front door, banging on the front door. Charles let him into the house. I don't know why he opened the door. Maybe he said it was the police or something and tricked him and barged in. But I remember my uncle coming into my room, picking me up out of my bed. It was dark. It was very, very early in the morning, and taking me out of my room and down the hall into the living room. And my uncle tried to stop him. He said, "What are you doing?" And my great uncle sat me down and got physical with my Uncle Charles. He was trying to stop him from taking me. And my uncle couldn't stop him because he didn't have a gun, but Dieter did have a gun on him, and he whipped it out and told him that, "Look, I'll kill you and I'll kill everyone here if you don't let me take her right now." And so, Charles didn't really have a choice other than to let me go. And I could see it. Like, he was just, sad with what was going on. Like, he could not protect me. And I know that he prided himself on like being kind of a father figure to me in my life. So I just remember seeing the look of really, really terrible sadness on his face as he basically just held the front door open and let Dieter walk out with me. And so I was taken into this like a dark maroon van, and there were curtains on the windows. But my grandfather and my grandmother were sitting in the back seat with Dieter's wife, Lindy, was there, and Dieter sat in the front. And then we were driven all the way back up to Orange County to Dieter's house, Lindy and Dieter's house. This is the only time that I've ever been to Lindy and Dieter's house. It was in 1996 when this happened. And it's taken out of the van, and then we were walking over, me and my grandfather and my great uncle were going over to the garage. They were fighting with each other in German, like straight up screaming at each other, arguing with each other in German. And Dieter had on a Nazi hat, shorts and a button-up shirt and a Nazi hat, like a Nazi officer's hat. And I want to talk to you too about where they come from, which is southeast Germany, Coburg, Germany, which is interesting too.
So your Dieter is from Germany, right? Is that what you're saying?
Dieter and Hilmar were born in Coburg, Germany. Growing up, they were in Hitler Youth, and at the end of World War II, the Nazis were putting the kids on trains to go fight. And so that's what they had to do. And I mean, they witnessed their friends, getting shot in the head, all this kind of stuff. And after the war was over,
hold on one second. I don't just want to.
I got sidetracked.
No. That's okay. That's okay. This is very fascinating because I think in your testimony, I heard you say that they were arguing in German. So they, so they have, they're from Germany. How did you know about this? Did you know about this through your memories, or is this just common information in your family that
this is just common information in my family that like my grandfather and his brother were in Hitler Youth. It was like Demolay Boys Club. Like, in America we have Demolay Boys Club for the kids, and then that grooms them to become Freemasons. Or if you're a girl, you get sent to the Rainbow Girls, which is basically setting girls up to become Order of the Eastern Star witches. So in Germany at this time, they had Hitler Youth, and that was setting kids up to become Nazis later on. And my grandfather, so Hilmar and Dieter, their father had the choice to become a Nazi or join the German army. And their father chose to join the German army because his father, my great-great-grandfather, was in the German army during World War I. He died in France in World War I. And I've seen one of his jackets or his long coats. It's like a family heirloom, I guess. So just to give you background information, like I come from Germans. And
right.
I know my grandfather has all of his Hitler Youth stuff still. He still has like a very early edition of Mein Kampf sitting on the bookcase next to his Bible. It's really weird.
That is very weird, but it all makes sense. It really does. And I'm getting goosebumps over here just because of this information. I mean, it's just that's one of the number one questions we ask, Carly, when somebody talks about satanic ritual abuse, or they have a testimony, or they're wondering if they were, we ask them, is there any German ancestry in your family? That's like one of the top 2 or 3 questions that we ask them. So anyway, you didn't know that, but go ahead. I don't want to interrupt. You're doing great. So
So anyways, so Hilmar and Dieter were arguing with each other in German outside of the garage door. They had a detached garage from the rest of their house. And then I think my grandfather kind of gave up on the argument, and then Dieter took me into the garage, which was dark, but his car was in the garage, and it was a like champagne gold colored Cadillac with Master Mason license plates, but it also had the Freemason flags, like little flags that like a president would have on his limousine, of Freemason flags on his car. And like I guarantee you, like if you drove that thing around today, somebody would probably mess your car up because of what people are knowing now about Freemasonry. So, anyways, my grandfather closed the door to the garage, like the side door, as I was taken into the garage, and I got pushed into the back of the Cadillac, and it was like kind of a long Cadillac where there was probably like, 3 rows of seats, but 1 row was taken out so that there's a lot of space inside. And this was when I was raped for the first time. Um, he basically told me to get naked and take my clothes off, and I refused. And then he ended up facilitating that against my will, pulling me onto his lap, and I fought him hard. I fought him as best as I could, kicking him, trying to get off and away. And I did. I managed to give him a few good punches, and then I just went over to the doorway and started peeing. And then that's just when he got pissed off and kicked me
And
out of the car and told me to go in the house.
I was just
So,
going to ask, remind us
yeah,
again how old you were at this time.
6 years old.
6 years old. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just turned 6 years old. My birthday is in March, so this was like 2 months after my 6th birthday. I'm sorry, 3 months. So after being taken back into the house part, I was ordered to sit on the couch in the living room. And they had some pornography being played on the television. And there was a little girl in the living room too with me. And she was completely naked. She had long, dark hair and she was tan. She was not white. She did not speak English. Like, this girl was absolutely trafficked from out of the country, I'm quite sure. I could also hear that there was at least 1 or 2 other children that I didn't see, but I heard them. I heard them crying. I heard them screaming in a bedroom down the hallway. But since I was ordered to sit on the couch, like, when you're in this situation, you're in shock and you'll just kind of go along with what you're being told, especially when you're a kid and you're scared. So I'm just sitting in this living room, completely weirded out. Like, when you're 6 years old, you don't know what sex is, you don't know what rape is. And so it's all very foreign. And then Dieter comes out and hands me and this little girl in the living room juice boxes. And they were absolutely laced with something. I can't tell you which drug it is, but they were absolutely laced with something. And after we finished our juice boxes, he took us down the hallway from the living room. And there were bedrooms off to the right-hand side and the left-hand side. And I could see, like, the first bedroom on my right-hand side, the door was open about maybe like a foot. And I could see my grandmother sitting on the bed in her underwear, looking miserable. And she saw me. She looked at me, but she didn't say anything. And so Dieter took me and this girl further down the hall into a bedroom on the left-hand side. And in this bedroom, there was like a bed pushed up against like the right-hand side of the wall and a dresser with a mirror. And there was like pictures of naked children, children in lewd positions and in lingerie, just pictures everywhere on this dresser, on the walls. And there was also very small child-sized, like, lingerie, brasiers, underwear everywhere in this bedroom. And I remember getting onto the bed, and this little girl also getting onto the bed. And then I remember just blacking out. I don't know what happened to me in that room. Like, I can't tell you what happened to me in that bedroom or what happened to that little girl. I don't know what her fate was. I can assume that me and her were used in child pornography at that time. I can assume this. I can assume that this girl is not alive. However, I don't have any proof of what happened.
Well,
So then,
that's one of the questions I was going to ask you, Carly, is what do you
yeah.
think happened? Because the first time you told your testimony, that's exactly what I thought that happened, and I think there's a lot of evidence there. And again, you are not, I mean, you're giving what you remember, and you're not filling in the blanks and making stuff up. You're saying, hey, this is what I remember, this is what I don't remember.
Right.
And so anyway, you blacked out. Take it from there.
So I blacked out, and like I just told you, I don't know exactly what happened to me in that room, but I can only assume that we were used for some kind of child pornography. And when I remember next is waking up and being taken out of the house in the evening, like nighttime. It was dark again. So I spent like the good portion of the day at Lindy and Dieter's house where all of this stuff was going on. And then at night, it was time for, you know, the Freemason experience, I guess. So we got back into this van. However, everyone was kind of like dressed up like it was going to be some sort of fancy occasion. We got back into the van and then drove over to the Bellflower Masonic Center. And I remember the door opening and getting out of the car and some stranger grabbing me and picking me up and then carrying me into the building. And then over to the left-hand side is a set of stairs, a staircase. And down those stairs to a really long, kind of narrow hallway. And it had like some gray cement floors, plain walls, and the entire length of this hallway was lined with these like metal cages that you would put animals in. However, every few cages there was a child in it, naked and just crouched. Some of them were crying, "Please help me." Some of them were just had their head down. Some of them looked like they were emaciated. Some of them looked like they, I don't know, maybe they were dead already in the cage. Because, I mean, I know that there are sick people in this world who do things called, or do something called necrophilia. So I'm seeing this, and then we take a right hand turn into like the grand hallway, I want to call it, like the red carpet, the gold gilding, chandeliers, mirrors, um, oil paintings. And the first room that I was brought into was this all pink room, like bubblegum pink. And they had a huge black satanic pentagram up on the wall. And I was sat up on some kind of like table, and all of these women dressed completely in black were just rubbing me all over my body, telling me, "Oh, you're so lucky to be the chosen one," and "Oh, someday you'll be like us," and "Oh, don't you want to do this someday?" And it was a weird like love bombing experience, and especially to go from seeing these children who are trafficked in cages to 5 seconds later being in this room and then being love bombed. It just sends you on a weird roller coaster. It's a bizarre traumatic mind control technique. And then after being in this room and getting love bombed by what I know now is the Order of the Eastern Star ladies, and like my Aunt Lindy was there, and she was part of this group of women. And I want to say there was about maybe 20 to 30 of these women in this room. And I was the only child in this room. Excuse me, sorry. So then after that, I was taken back out into the long, like kind of grand hallway with the red carpet and the chandeliers. And that's when I saw this woman who I assume was the master Eastern Star witch or what have you, where she was the only one allowed in this hallway and with the, or to be around the other men, I guess. And I just remember her long black dress, her short black hair, and whenever I see pictures of Shirley MacLaine, I think like that looks exactly like that woman that I
Hmm.
saw there at the Bellflower Masonic Center. She gives me the creeps. Anyways, and after that we took a left-hand turn into another hallway and then a right-hand turn into this really long dining room. and it was jam packed with Freemasons. And when I tell you that it was about 100 of them, I'm not kidding. There was about 100 people there, maybe 125, and the room was jam packed, super loud. And when I was brought into and carried into this dining room, like they all started cheering and getting excited. And I could feel like something bad was about to happen to me. So I was like, this can't be good. This cannot be a good thing. And I was just carried across this dining room to the far end. And at the end, there was this double-headed bird on the wall with like gold rays of sunlight behind it. There was also a guy there who had a huge, really professional looking camera, all black, and it was sitting up on his shoulder. So I know that there's a video of what happened to me in this Masonic center somewhere. And I'm sure that they go back and watch these videos. However, after I was taken to the end of the dining room, like where the eagle was, there was a huge, gigantic book on this altar that was facing down the dining table, and I can only assume that this was the Bible. And then they took it off and then placed me on this altar, and then they stood me on it so they could just start taking my clothes off. They stripped me down. They were all whistling and jeering at me. And I felt like, why God? Why is this happening to me? This is not real. This cannot be happening to me. What is going on? And that's when they put me down on my stomach and inserted something into my anus, into my rectum, like a stick or something. And I remember like looking out and seeing all of these men just like jeering and laughing and yelling at me while this is happening, and I went deaf. Like all of a sudden I just couldn't hear anymore. And it was so painful. Like I didn't disassociate because like I don't have multiple personality. I don't have dissociative identity disorder. I don't have schizophrenia. That usually occurs when you've experienced trauma over and over and over and over. And this just happened within like a 24-hour period. So anyways, they removed what was inside of me and flipped me over onto my back. And that's when they formed like two lines on both sides of this long dining table, and they each took turns having their way with me. Now, I get a lot of like questions like, "Oh, how come you survived this? There's no way you could have lived without getting medical attention." Well, I did receive medical attention there. These people are doctors. They have their own doctors who clean up the kids. So I'll get to that. But anyways, not all of them penetrated me with their genitalia. Some of them did other things, and I'm not really going to go into those details. However, when it was my grandfather's turn to have his way with me, he did not want to look at me. He wanted me to face away. There were times where there was a blindfold put on me too, and I can only imagine that it was because there were people who didn't want me to see their face, you know? And then when it was my grandfather's brother's turn, Dieter's turn to have his way with me, he wanted me face up, no blindfolds. And yeah, he's a sick, sick person. But at a certain point, I want to say that there was probably like maybe 20 to 25 guys left in line who were waiting. Some of them had their pants down, some of them had just their underwear, like just dropped trow. A lot of them were just fondling themselves, and they had to stop because I was bleeding. And I'll go into what's going on with my anatomy too. If I'll talk about it, I don't care. And that point, they had to stop because they were worried that I was going to die. I was bleeding a lot. At that point, they decided to end the sexual abuse part and start the ritual. Now, what happened first was they brought a little boy on a moving cart he was strapped down to it face up, and they brought him out over to my right hand side looking down the table, just about to where the like light fixture was in this room. And the men who were in the tuxedos and all that jazz, they cleared out, and there was a smaller group of men in these, like, I couldn't tell if it was dark brown or dark red, but they were in hooded robes, and one of them had a like goat skull mask or a goat skull thing on his head. Excuse me, sorry. And I believe that it was Dieter Franz who was the one killing this little boy. Like he was, I think it was him who was standing over him, and then he proceeded to cut him open in the chest and just stab him and torture this little boy who was just screaming until it stopped. And I, I was being put into a some kind of animal carcass, probably a goat or a sheep carcass or something. But it was like the rib cage was of this animal was all around me, but my head could still see through the top of it. I mean, they couldn't close it up completely, so I could still see everything that was really going on in the room. And when the boy stopped screaming, like I could see Dieter like using his hand to cup the blood and like eat the entrails of this boy. And I just remember thinking, this is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my life. And there was a line of guys over behind him, over by the guy wearing the goat skull mask, and they were holding glasses. Like I think they were ready to collect the blood of this little boy and then pass the cup around so that everybody gets to drink some of the adrenaline-filled blood of this poor kid. And when the little boy stopped screaming, he was officially dead. That's when I saw like black smoke, or I thought it was smoke. It was actually like a black mist, because I was like, oh my gosh, the building's on fire. Are we all going to die in a fire now? It was black mist because I did not smell any smoke. And I just remember being completely bewildered by this when I saw it. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing, because I thought, oh my gosh, is the light fixture on fire? Why is this culminating in the middle of the room right over by this boy's dead body? And the blackness just grew and grew and grew until the whole room was just dark with it. And then out, I know this loses a lot of people at this, but I did witness a demon of Lucifer, because all of the men were chanting something. Not in English, but in some other language, but I did hear them say Lucifer quite a bit. And I saw this demon, and people ask me, like, what did it look like? What did this demon look like? It was very black. It had red eyes. And the best description that I could tell you that it looks like is, if you've ever played the video game Diablo 3, there's a picture of Diablo, and it looks like that, sort of like almost a reptilian demon-like entity. And when it spoke, it almost sounded, it didn't sound anything like a human speaking at all, and it didn't speak English. It sounded like thunder and just otherworldly. So I just remember hiding my face in this carcass, trying to not look at its eyes, because I knew that this is not good. This is straight up evil. I was scared of what I was seeing. And then it just kind of disappeared and the lights came back on. So yeah, just seeing a demon is one of the weirdest things I have ever experienced.
I think your account is very fascinating, and I believe that everything you're saying is really groundbreaking. And you've already broke the ground, obviously, in your own testimonies. You've shared this, and as I think a lot of people will agree with me, as I'm listening to you recall these memories, I'm on the edge of my seat, but I'm believing what you're saying, because you just can't make up this kind of detail. Of course, a demonic entity would manifest after what they did. They are doing the exact thing that would cause a demon to show up. in that kind of a powerful manifestation. Now, for anybody listening, you've got to create the environment for this kind of manifestation to happen. We are surrounded by demons, we're attacked by demons, we're tempted by all that stuff. But because of the power of God, the spirit of God in us, because of our prayers, they are not, they don't have the ability to manifest in that way. But in that environment, when every single person there is cheering them on and opening the door for this manifestation and doing the rituals, and I mean this is intense. This is intense, Carly, and I'm looking at the chat room right now, and everybody is, they're brokenhearted, but they are completely supporting you and what you're saying. And they're just, they're mad, they're sad, and they are just saying this is what we've heard from other people. These same kinds of testimonies, these rituals. There's a little bit of a, you're adding some new things into it that people haven't heard before. But I think that there's going to be other people out there, that are going to hear this and going to be like, that was me, that's what happened to me. So okay, so you went through this ritual, severe traumatic sexual abuse, manifestation of a demon. You were put inside of a carcass, and we've heard of this before. And they use this type of thing for different reasons. Sometimes they'll put people or children in an animal and have them be reborn in a way. But this is all part. There's a very significant reason for every single thing that they do. So you've been through all this, and the demonic manifest. What do you remember after that? After the lights come on?
Well, after the lights came on, that's when I was taken to this sort of like medical clean room. Now, I can't remember if there's a hospital right next to this Masonic Center, Bellflower Masonic Center, but I could assume that they have a tunnel from this place to that hospital that's nearby, because that's what they do. So, of course, this person who was treating me and cleaning me up in my crotch, um, he was very nice to me. He seemed to have compassion towards what I'd been through. He was white, he had glasses, he had dark brown hair, but he also had a mask on his face so that I wouldn't see his nose and mouth. And after he sort of like cleaned up my body, and he then took me off of the like medical table and set me down in a chair, then proceeded to strap my arms down to the chair. And I just remember asking him, like, okay, what are you going to do to me? And he wouldn't really respond, but he brought over a tray and he had a scalpel in his hand and proceeded to make a really small incision in my left arm, about in the middle. And then he took out some sort of instrument that it wasn't a syringe per se, but like maybe I could describe it as being a really long, clear, like hard plastic tampon applicator, to get the gist of like what it looks like. And inside of it, I saw the chip that they put in my arm. So he took this and shoved it into the tiny incision that he made, and he shoved it really deep into my left forearm. But I saw the chip beforehand, and I can tell you exactly what it looks like too. It's teeny tiny, like maybe like less than half of a centimeter. And it's sort of a little oblong, like not oval, but like a pill-shaped encasement, clear, and then inside there is a spherical circular part attached to a rectangular flat part by a little wire. And I remember seeing it. Like I remember clearly seeing it inside of this kind of not a syringe, but the instrument that was used to put it in my arm. Now, after that, he just kind of put a little antibiotic ointment on it and threw a band-aid over the incision. And people ask me in comments, like, show us your scar, show us your scar. I don't have a scar from this. It was done by a professional with a very sharp blade. Like, I remember scraping all of the skin off of my knee when I was about 10 years old, and I had a huge bloody scar on my knee. And today, it's just a couple of tiny scratch marks, like almost up on my thigh now because I'm a lot taller than I was when I was 10. But it's like, I don't have a scar on my arm. However, I will get into this. I have gone to the emergency room, gotten x-rays, and I have seen the scar tissue from when the instrument was jammed down my left forearm. But I'll tell you about all of that medical COINTELPRO in a second. I'm going to finish talking about what happened to me at the Masonic Center. So after this doctor was done, put the Band-Aid on my arm, it was then that I was taken into this like very dimly lit kind of, I want to call it a dungeon room with the black and white checkered floors. There was like walls and dividers in this room made of pallets, like crappy old pallets. And then when I was brought into this room, they placed this baby in front of me. And this baby was white and wearing a white diaper. And they told me if that you need to kill this baby. You need to stab the baby. There was a knife on the right-hand side of this baby on this altar in front of me. And I couldn't do it. I told them, no, I'm not going to do that. They even put the knife in my hand and told me to do it or they would kill me. And I couldn't do it. And they were furious about this. And I said, I'm not going to do this. And that's when I saw the baby that was chained on the wall and screaming that had like really bruised, mangled, black and blue legs, just all the lower extremities of this baby that was on the wall, chained by its arms, was screaming. And then a police officer who was white, he had like kind of like a short blonde buzz cut, short sleeved black police officer's uniform, stabbed this baby in the head to kill it. And then after that, I was chained to the floor. Over onto my left-hand side, there was another child chained to the floor, and I kept trying to like talk to this child, and no response. It was very dimly lit, and I could just barely touch this child's hand with my left hand, and it felt very crusty. And at that point, I was like kind of freaked out too because I knew that this child was dead. And they just left me chained to the floor in this room for I don't know how long, but it seemed like forever that they just left me chained to the floor. And I just kept thinking in my head, trying to find a place to hide in my own brain to give myself some comfort, to escape like what was happening to me. And all I could think about at all, the only thing in my mind was bright white light. That's it. Just a clean, perfect white room with bright white light. And I just remained fixated on that to try to counter everything that I was seeing. And I could hear other children being like tortured on the other side of this wall of pallets. I don't know what they were doing to these kids, but I mean, it wasn't good. I could hear them screaming. And I have to wonder too, like, how do they dispose of the bodies, Like, how do they cover this all up? Well, these people are well connected. They are doctors, they are surgeons, they are engineers, they are lawyers, they're government officials, they're politicians, Hollywood elites, billionaires, but also they're like regular people who go to church on Sunday and donate their time to charities, and they're so well connected, it's almost impossible for them not to have an outlet to dispose of any evidence, Like I feel like since I've come out from saying this, they're probably down in that Bellflower Masonic Center filling the whole basement with concrete right now. You know what I'm saying?
You know, again, it's fascinating because if anybody knows about the film Dark Covenant, which was made by John Pounders and now you see TV, it's about a satanic ritual abuse case that took place in Evansville, Indiana. And the Masons were I mean, they were all over this thing, covering this up and involved. And, you know, uh, what we learned from Scotland and just my recent trip over there is not every single Mason is a Satanist. Okay. They make a decision to do an oath, which is crossing the line. Don't get me wrong, but the deeper they get in, the more involved they get in. But every single Mason will protect another Mason. That's the
Right.
oath that they have to take. And even if they commit a crime. So when you have Masons, the law enforcement saturated, the politicians, political offices, judges, you know, um, filled with Masons, it's easy, and doctors and hospitals, it's easy to get away with these crimes.
Yep.
And um wow, wow. You know, I think a lot of people would agree as we're listening to your testimony, we're like, okay, hopefully that's it. This nightmare is over now. But then as you go on, something worse happens and something worse happens.
Right.
And I want to give you the the time to finish, and what happens after this. But this is just a nightmare, Carly.
I agree. It feels like a living nightmare. And so after these men in the robes came back into this like dungeon room with the black and white child checkered floors, um, they picked me up off the floor and it was time to leave now. So they took me down this like long, dark, black hallway, and all of these masons kind of like lined up down this hallway to kind of say goodbye to me and salute me on my way out the door, which is just weird. Like happily, like, oh hi, thanks for stopping by. And we went out the side door of the building. And I remember seeing a couple of police officers close the door behind them. So then as I was taken back to the van, which was parked like right in front of the building, I could see the yellow golden G with the square and compass. I could see the Bellflower Masonic Center, like the blue lit up letters on the top roof line of the building. And even though like I couldn't really read at the time, I remember what it looked like. I remember the outlines. And I remember also one of the guys who were putting me back into the van saying like, we should have blindfolded her for this. It's like, yeah, you probably should have, but I'm glad you didn't. So then I was put back into the van and taken back to Spring Valley House, where there was a lot of police officers there hanging out with Charlene Charles. And I'm sure that they were giving them the lowdown, like, hey, if you speak out about this, guess what? Guess what's going to happen to you? You know? Because I know that they were very protective of me. I know that they loved me. I know that they wanted what's best for me. And I know that they probably called the police the second that Dieter left with me, you know? And then, of course, it was probably a huge shock to them to find out that the police are completely complicit in this and covering it up because guess what? A lot of them are Freemasons. And it's the rule to cover up their crimes. So I was brought into the house and placed in some police officers' arms. And then the police took me to my bed and then threw me down on my bed. No compassion, nothing. And they went to my door, turned around, and told me, like in a really loud tone, almost yelling at me, that if I ever even think about speaking out about this, that I will end up dead, along with all of the people that I love. And then they
That
slammed the door and
infuriates
walked
me
out.
so much, Carly. because who could you turn to? What
No
are little
one.
children taught, as kids, who are our protectors?
Right. Should be
And
your
then,
parents and your family and the police, right? That's what you're
right,
taught.
right. So they were sending a message to you that you can never tell anybody about this because the people that are supposed to protect you are the ones actually perpetrating it. Ah, man. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So after that, like, I remember just laying down in my bed, just kind of petrified, not able to move. Like, I looked down and saw the bruises on my arms, my legs, the Band-Aid was there, and I just cried myself to sleep. And then the next morning, my Uncle Charles came to my room to wake me up because I'm sure the cops probably told him, like, hey, you got to send her back to school tomorrow, pretend like nothing happened, you know? And he came to my room and he looked like hell. He looked like he had been crying all night. And he told me, please never talk about this. Please keep this a secret. And I remember telling him that I would. And yeah, I did keep it a secret for a while as a kid. And I tried to block it out of my head because when you're put through trauma like that and you see what the authorities do, which is nothing to protect children, your eyes are awake and open. And it's I want to say that like ignorance is bliss because if you go your whole life thinking that like, the government wants what's best for you and the police are always there to help you, you live a happier life. But when you're a little kid and then having to go on with life with your eyes wide open to the evil that's going on in the world and having no ability at all to speak out, otherwise you face death, it's like, yeah,
How
I
long do you
I
think?
don't know how I got through it other than, um, God had to have been working through me at somehow, you know?
Well, it's amazing that you didn't disassociate, but like you were saying earlier, your trauma was only over a small period of time.
Right.
So it, it wasn't ongoing and ongoing. So a couple questions I'm thinking of. How long do you think it took you to block this out of your mind and kind of move on?
I wanna say it took me about, like, a year to just try to stop thinking about it because you can totally train your brain and train yourself to stop thinking about things that are bothering you, you know? And that's exactly what I did, and I had to just continue on and live, I guess. What's interesting too is that, like, my parents were never totally encouraging of, like, social events and gatherings. Like, the most of my birthdays and stuff, it was just kind of like family members that were there. I didn't really have, friend birthday parties until, like, I only had maybe, like, 1, 2, 3 birthday parties where I had, like, school friends at my birthday. Other times, it was just family members. Not a lot of, like, play dates. Um, there was a family who lived in Spring Valley on a block over from this house, and they were a very poor family. It actually turns out that there was a lot of child trafficking of those kids going on too, which I found out later in life. But these kids would come over to the house in Spring Valley, and they would steal rocks out of the yard and stuff. And then my aunt and my mother named them the street rat kids, which I thought was funny at the time as a kid. But now looking back, I'm like, that's just horrible because these kids were just poor, and yet you have this derogatory term for them. And it's like, okay, well, all right, Mom and Shelly, you guys came from a trailer park in Iowa, so like, who are you? Anyways, that was just a side note too of that I wasn't the only person being trafficked in this neighborhood when just one block over there's a house full of these kids getting trafficked.
Carly, why do you think they did this to you, and why do you think they stopped?
I think that my grandfather, he was against what was happening. Like, I remember before the abuse happened, Dieter and Hilmar, we were all at Hilmar's house up in Orange County. And Dieter forced my grandfather to go through like some sort of initiation where he puts a blindfold on my grandfather and rolls up the pant leg of his pant and makes him take his shoes off, and then does a bunch of like weird marches around the living room, then says some speech to him. And then he makes my grandfather strip down to his boxers and like white wife beater tank top and do some more like marching around the living room and saying some scripts and things. So I do believe that Dieter forced Hilmar into Freemasonry. And then when Hilmar saw the abuse that happened to me and what was going on, he became vehemently against it and decided against it. And this is only my assumption. I would assume that my grandfather threatened to kill Dieter if he continued to abuse me and continued to force him to participate in Freemasonry. And you know, I don't know for sure, but I can only assume that this is the most plausible scenario for why I wasn't continued in rituals.
So even though these people in your family were complicit in your abuse, they also had some sort of conscience
Right. I
where
believe that they do have some sort of conscience, but on the other hand, too, they were silent about it. So at the same time, I can see a perpetrator and a victim in the same human being. And people ask me, like, oh, don't you want to go and just kill all these people? Absolutely not. Like, I still see them as human beings and I still have love for them, even though it may seem crazy for me to say this, because I have seen the potential, the good in them for who they can be, but I've also seen the most evil and vulgar and sadistic side of them, which is what rules them.
well, and you don't want to become them,
No,
right?
never.
Wow. I just don't know what to say. I've heard when your videos came across my radar, and they were sent to me from a friend actually from Ireland, is how the first time I heard about you actually.
Oh, wow.
And so they've been, people all around the world are seeing your testimony. And when I watched it a couple times. I showed it to my wife, and we watched it together, and I've been sharing it. I've been talking about it. And I I just don't know. I just don't know what to say. I'm angry, and I'm compelled because nobody wants to talk about this. Nobody wants to acknowledge that this is real, and people will in their heart say, yeah, this is real, but they're fearful of it. They don't want to help people like you because they're afraid that's going to make them a target. um I mean, I'm not I'm totally okay with people that don't want to talk about this because I can't live, you know what I'm saying, for you. But I will encourage people that, just like we were saying, the best place to hide is in plain sight, and a
Yes.
lot of people are waiting for their perpetrators to die so they can speak out about this sort of thing. Anything that you would say to someone who's thinking about disclosing their abuse?
Yeah. Like, if you are a victim of ritual abuse, satanic ritual abuse, Masonic abuse, and you have any sort of inclination to speak out, please do so. Like, I will put your video on my channel too and direct people to go and support you as well. And, I totally understand why people choose to remain silent because, I mean, you will be hated for being courageous. There are people who do not want you to expose the darkness because that's what keeps them going is the silence, you know?
No, agreed, agreed. Wow, Carly, I cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing your testimony again. I know it can't be easy, and these are horrific things, and nobody wants to talk about these things or hear these things, but we cannot bury our head in the sand and pretend that it's not going on. I
Right.
we have to face it, and we have to stand in the gap. And I've seen all kinds of comments in the chat room saying, we're praying for you, Carly, we're praying for you and lifting you up. And I
Thank
know
you.
that you, yeah, I know that you appreciate that.
I do.
So and I would encourage people to continue to pray for Carly. And I just want to say to you, um I that I something I would say to anybody: draw as close to the Lord as you can. And because I'm telling you what, there's always backlash for this kind of disclosure. And in my experience, we expect it one way, but it actually comes a different way, you know? So we might be expecting somebody to show up or to threaten us, and that very well could happen. But I would encourage you to be on the guard spiritually for uh, people doing rituals against you and trying to attack your sanity and your emotional state and things like that. They're going to want to break that down. They're going to want to discredit you because you've already come out in the open. So they're like, okay, it's too late to kill her, so we got to discredit her, and that's what they like to do. So I just want to encourage you, and obviously you have friends here at Through the Black, and you can call upon us,
Thank
and
you.
we
I
will
love
help
you
you out.
all.
Yeah, and we will help you out, in any way that we can. But thank you so much for coming on, Carly. And we're gonna shut this thing down now. Hang on the line because I
Absolutely.
want to say goodbye to you off the air.
Okay.
But guys, throughtheblack.com is the website. We have a thing called the Legendary Campaign. And the idea behind that campaign is to raise awareness about this exact thing that we were talking about today, because the public at large wants to ignore this. And the Legendary Campaign says, hey, we're not going to let you ignore this. We're going to push this in your face and say, this is real. You need to acknowledge this, and you need to get in the fight somehow, especially the body of Christ. If you're not going to do anything else, you you need to pray. You need to pray. So God bless you guys. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you next time. Okay, bye.